Welcome everyone back to the Pomminos channel. If you are new around here, hit that like and subscription. We are back with more AFL pre-season takeaways and reviews, and we're here with North Melbourne versus Melbourne, the final game we are covering, as we now have a complete set of one fixture each. In this video, we'll be covering how North Melbourne looked, a new and improved forward line, how they transitioned from the halfback, and Melbourne missing a host of big names but looked sharp, dominant and structured. We'll break down the game, give you 5 major takeaways and really get you informed for the last games of the pre-season next week. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Coming into this game, it was interesting. North Melbourne were missing Zachy Fisher, Eddie Ford. He was doing the Kangaroo TV show. Season launch, Callum Coleman-Jones, George Wardlaw, Bryn Teakle and Zane Duursma, while Melbourne really were missing Judd McVie, Caleb Windsor, Jack Viney, Colton Thulstrop, Shane McAdam, Stephen May, Christian Salem, Petracca, Charlie Spargo, Max Gawn, Ed Langdon, Melksham and Fritsch. So they were really behind the 8 ball, and this game was a really entertaining game. Melbourne really did have control of this game for large portions of the game. And what was a real standout for Melbourne was their ability just to control the game and keep North Melbourne at hands off almost. In the second quarter though, North Melbourne really did showcase some really good score launches, their ability transition, their young blokes really getting involved quite heavily, and a real Clarkson style game of being really rigid to break down. Over into the third, Melbourne started to show their class, and you could see the young lads of North Melbourne start to tire a little bit. The ability of Sharp, their young player coming through, really stood out. His running was really a case in point and really did separate the midfield of North at times at ease with his deep leads up. Van Ruin looked a real threat as well, staying deep in the goal square, really giving them targets. And in the fourth quarter, North Melbourne had really shelved it. Melbourne ran away with it, the experience. But a real good game for 3 quarters, which both sides will really take some hope out of it and some real things to work on with round 1 fast approaching. So let's get into the 5 things to watch. So the first takeaway for this game I thought was quite obvious, really, and that was none other than North's Melbourne forward line looks genuinely threatening when you look at it. And what I mean by that was Jack Darling coming in there really looked like he was very vocal the entire time. We always say the difference between top teams and rubbish teams is communication. And there was a lot of communication there. I thought Paul Curtis looked absolutely phenomenal at times. He looked really strong and was a real menace throughout. He is really set for a real strong year, in my opinion. He looked really good. And then when you look at how Darling and how Larkey operated, the movement was really good, and that was a real noticeable thing. The forward patterns of entry looked really strong, and they really did bring it out and show it really at the death. Sheasel, really, his zip from midfield to forward really does showcase that, and they will be a problem in the season. If you can't put North away like Melbourne did towards the end of the game, I expect that to get better as intensity improves. But this really did showcase North Melbourne are probably not in the bottom tier. They're ready to get into that mid-tier, and this season will be a building year for that. Number 2, Clayton Oliver looks back. He looked fit, he looked hungry, and more importantly, he looked happy. He started to play with a smile on his face. He was really robust just there. I thought he controlled the midfield incredibly well. He did the classic take contact and offload inside traffic. He looked strong. He stood up in the tackle. And he was a real menace. He was really lively in the minutes he did play. North Melbourne needs him back to their best, in my opinion. Petracca, there's going to be question marks who's coming back from such a brutal injury, which means Viney and Oliver, and Viney didn't play in this game, have to be that contested ball. And he was really strong. Ran the clearances with ease. He got metres gained. And he looked a real live wire. So he looks really ready to shine again, and I wish him all the best because I think the AFL needs Clayton Oliver. Kyle Langford, the off-season addition, and probably stiff to not be a top 3 pick, looks seamless in the way he slotted in. And I straight away thought of Petracca. When he did have his midfield minutes, he was tough, he was hard. And although he hasn't got the pace of Petracca, that core strength is insane for just a child, basically. He looked to be really impactful front of centre. He was pushing players out. He was handballing really well. He was taking his chances really solidly. And he's definitely a player, I think, who's got a lot of goals in him as well. I can see him being used long-term as kind of that Dustin Martin, 50% on the ball and then slide him up. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him take the centre stage in the full forward position at times at 6'6". I think someone like that in the goal square leading up to centre-half forward could really be a problem. Melbourne were missing, as we said, a lot of players, and it was particularly players that really get them transitioning and front of centre players. Carl Langford looked deadly, and I was really impressed with him. Smart decision-making, and hitting the scoreboard will come. Number 3 was Melbourne without Gawn, and what impressed me was their spread of goals. We know Max Gawn is incredibly important, and he does the ruck work 90% of the time, but his movement around the ground, I thought they'd really negated that well, and they controlled the game very well without him. Max Gawn floating forward in this game, I think, would have made the scoreboard a little bit better and a little bit easier, and that's one thing to take out. But the way they handled it, the way their stoppage worked without Gawn dominating in taps, I thought was very impressive. Working with Tom Campbell and stuff, that's a different type of dimension, really, for these guys, but you really did see how they worked around with a different. The midfield was busy. They were active. They were looking for the handballs. Also, no Stephen May down the back, and we often see that Stephen May exit out of D52 Max Gawn. They negated that well. The work around stoppage from the midfield, they were all busy. And if they can stay busy with Max Gawn there, I don't think Melbourne will be as bad as many people are saying. I thought their defensive pressure never dropped. I thought their forward entries were efficient. And it showed an adaptability from Melbourne, which is something really good. So Max Gawn would have watched this, cheeky smile on his face, and said, you know what? I'm ready. I'm ready. I can't wait to go back into this. And 5, Melbourne's backline is 100% better than Harrison. We've had Harrison Petty down the back. And he's finally moved back down there. And I always say this about Melbourne's Premiership side. When you looked when Harrison Petty was there, he took the most dangerous forward. He kind of was just that annoying, nagging type player, getting his hands in front, which allowed Stephen May and Lever to really attack the ball and intercept. And that looked like that again today. I looked at it, and although, yes, you can say Larkey kicked goals, I'd say 2 of them goals weren't on Petty. It was him moving up the ground. And then all the goals that were kicked in that back line where people might complain, when you add Lever, May and Petty as that trio, you've got real problems there for me, because what will happen in that forward line is they will intercept 90% of them. Christian Salem's very good on the ground. They got hurt on the ground ball games as well. I think this is the missing jigsaw piece for Melbourne. And this makes me really excited because I think they were so hard to break down. And it became like a threat when you kicked inside 50. I thought Petty stood up and he was a nuisance. And all he needed was his intercept markers around there and better users on the ground ball. So I thought that was really solid from him. All in all, we learned quite a lot. Is North Melbourne's forward line and midfield now looking quite deadly? We saw Colby McCurchy play at halfback. That transition game's there. How do you rate North Melbourne on this one little scratch game? Clayton Oliver, is he back to his best? If he can get there, Melbourne's hopes and dreams genuinely expand. And how good was Harvey Langford? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you thought of that game. And I can't wait to cover our final week of pre-season next week. I'll be on the Blue Abroad show tonight, so come and see me 7 o'clock with Terry if you are a Carlton fan. And if you're not a Carlton fan, just come and say hi. It'll be a good laugh. And also, there will be paper talk later this evening. So peace, love and light. Pom out.
Spent all my life holding all of it closely. I played it in a sense, a feel of discontent. I'm finally facing it all, fearless.